Yo, welcome to the E Squared Show. This is going to be a different episode. This is going to be a lot more, reflecting on stuff we're working on. You'll get to hear the conversation between the Super Gennies and the interesting stuff there. But I wanted to give you guys like a sneak peek at the Koans. Yo, the Kickstarter, bro, 1 week, man. We're close to 7Gs. We want to keep going, get it to the most, more money, more copies, more licensed art, etc., etc. So, like, yo, make sure you help out, whatever. These are the Trad Khalsa Koans on Kickstarter, and this is a sample, so you guys can see what it is that I'm working on for the book. So, this is the first page. This is the cover, actually. And the actual book will be hardcover, but this is basically, like, you get the idea. So, what is the Trad Khalsa? Trad Khalsa is basically, like, all this Puntic stuff that we're on, and, no one really likes what we're saying, and I'm getting a lot of pushback. Some people are down with it, and I'm using this picture of Socrates' death because he is killed by the state for influencing the youth, and people are getting mad at me and saying things like, yo, you guys are influencing the youth. And people who also just, this Trad Khalsa stuff will be also like influencing the youth. And this guy's also Shaheed, right? He drinks hemlock, as you see in this picture, and that's how he's killed. And one of the koans literally is don't look at the finger, or don't praise the finger, praise where the finger is pointing to. You won't see that in this. This is like 13-page sampler. And then we have the contents, the student, the doubter, the reconciler, the teacher, the master. So everyone starts as a student on the path of enlightenment. And then, people come along the way and they start doubting something they're learning. But that doubt is sometimes good. You should question. And when you question, you start to reconcile the questioning you're doing with what you know. And when you come to that level, you become a teacher. And through more work, more introspection, you become the master. So these are the contents, the chapters, basically. Also, this is not literally like how it's going to ship. There's still like forward, getting another guy to say some stuff. We're going to thank the patrons. Like, this is just for us. Again, this is a sample, right? And so here's the first one. So when I talk about like, yo, this is my art background, this is a Rembrandt. And the picture is called A Young Scholar and His Tutor. And so the student becoming the student is the first step to enlightenment. I'm not going to read all this out, but, fine, I'll actually read it out. Sikh means learner, for are we all not learners on this earth, on the path of life? This in essence makes us students, but students of what? In Sikhi, it's not simply being a student of the human gurus who came before, but the truth. This point is exemplified with the current guru being a granth, which means book. Within its bindings, the words written reflect on the truth of reality, and paying obeisance to the truth makes us students and Sikhs. And this is the first koan, all right? And mind you, like, there's a break, right? So it's a book, it folds in half. This will be page 1, page 2, right? And so Khalsa Khod Khuda, the Khalsa is the manifestation of the divine. In our updated version, it's Khalsa as the self-manifestation of the divine. You'll see that in the newer versions. And also, I didn't put the captions yet, so stay tuned for that. Consistency is dharam, renounce renunciation. So just reading these ones out. Many paths have sought liberation through renunciation, believing that detachment from the world leads to freedom. The Khalsa, however, renounces this very renunciation, a double negation. The Khalsa does not withdraw from the world to be liberated. The Khalsa attains liberation by being one with it. So I have a picture of like a sadhu monk renunciating life, being an ascetic, and then the biggest, most purest example of not renouncing the world is having a family, because you need to be part of your society. You need to help them, take care of them, etc., etc. Yeah, you can pause, read this other stuff. I'm not going to do all that. Then there are no enemies in death. Balance is the double-edged sword of abandonment, indulgence. And, you can read whatever this stuff says, but some of the images are updated. Again, we're on version 5. We're 100 pages deep. This is only like 15 pages, so... the book, the koans have already been written. It's just the formatting, right? So it's going to follow this kind of structure, the stuff at the bottom, and then a little bit of writing, whatever. So the death of Pharaoh's firstborn son, Moses causes this, and, but once this child is dead, they're not his enemies. Holofernes, a very famous trope in art. She's killing Judith is killing Holofernes before they can attack the city or whatever. Samson captured by the Philistines. Like, these are all examples of like death, but when you realize like once they're dead, there is no enemy. You deserve the life you fight for, my protector, the destroyer. So here we have Hector fighting Achilles, and then Hector's funeral. in cases where like he wanted a free Troy from the Greeks' destruction, so he fought. You know, he literally fought for the life he wanted, which was a free Troy, and he still had to pay the cost at the end, which is death. You know, so it is what it is. The reality that the potentiality and the Khalsa, the Akalis right here, like they fought for the life that they wanted, to be the free Khalsa. My protector is the destroyer. This is Alexander the Great being threatened by his father. And so the explainer for here is, thy weapon shall not prosper against me, for the one who offers me protection can also be the cause of thy destruction. I just I fuck with it. You are alone from the womb to the tomb. That doesn't really need an explanation, right? But we have like whatever. Mother Nature is the true artist. There's a very famous picture. Many people have seen it. It's by forgot his name. It's the Great Wave. And another picture of Japan. These are woodblock prints. And then this is a Cézanne. I really love Cézanne's work. This image has been also changed to reveal yourself once the world is ready to receive. You never want to serve bread half cooked. A tempered mind can split a stone that an axe cannot. Our way is unique to even each other. Rembrandt right here. Listen, you just pause it and listen to it. The idea here is that, like, look, this is a bug. Like, these guys look like Khalsa, but they're Dutch. They have nothing to do with Sikh. And so, like, this is a double meta, because it's about, like, people in general, but also the Khalsa, right? So the Khalsa as a manifestation thrives on diversity, like a garden blooming with countless kinds of flowers. Its beauty lies in the individuality of each soul. For every Khalsa follows a Dharam uniquely attuned to their nature. So play on, like, nature and flowers and garden. And this is the Van Gogh right here. And I forgot who did that one. The weapon of choice can create death. What has proven more powerful in the destruction of countless lives? The sword that delivers the fatal blow, or the voice that leads multitudes down the path of violence? Kind of basically alluding to the fact that, like, speech can create death. Indulge in the beauty of the world. Like, I mean, this is indulgence, right? There's a lot of beauty, beautiful art. The building is beautiful. The sculptures, the clothing, the aesthetics, the paintings, the frames, everything. There's beauty, right? So, you know, as Khalsa, trad Khalsa, indulge in the beauty. And that's all we have for now. It's basically at 100 pages and or more. So I hope you guys enjoy. Donate to the Kickstarter. $70 gets you a book. 200 copies. I think we've already, like, we're there. Like, we're getting there. You know, it's been our 1 week only, and, you know, within 30 days, like, I feel pretty blessed for that fact. Thank you to everyone who's donated so far. I'm sorry for the black screen. It is what it is. But yeah, enjoy this conversation between Asa Singh and Arjun Singh Nirmala. Follow on the Patreon. This happened on the Discord, which you can get access on the Patreon. And yeah. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the E-Squared Show. We got two special guests. We got two super gyanis representing two Sampradas. We're going to make them fight to the death. We have Arjun Singh Nirmala at the bottom, wearing all orange. Singh is from UK. He's a youngin, studied under the Nirmala Samprada. Super smart guy. And then we have Chillin. I don't remember his real name. It's okay. And he's going to represent the Taksali Samprada academic sphere. Arjun Singh has spent considerable time in India studying under Nirmala Singhs, and Chillin also has, but they come from same road, different routes. Let's just say. And Chillin is currently working on articles on philosophy of Sikh thought. He's also a apologetics maestro, so you can hear him debate. Actually, he has no videos yet debating, you know, Muslims and Christians and stuff, but, like, he's practiced that, and a lot of the conversion episode is from the information that Chillin provided. And Arjun Singh is in the UK eating fish and chips right now, and so you'll see him constantly eating fries. But he is also a well-learned scholar who teaches Santhya. How about that, guys? You guys like that as an intro?
I think you got to give a little bit more credit to Arjun for his background.
Arjun
A little bit more credit.
Arjun is a bit of a mystique, you know. One time we had him in the call and he wasn't telling us information, you know.
Feeling very blessed to be on E Squared show, I always see these reels pop up every single day. Like, the minute I open my phone, I'm sure if I open my phone right now, they're gonna be, maybe not right now, but whenever I open my phone up, usually I always find a reel from, the E Squared show.
Gotta spam the fucking algo, bro. But yo, can you talk like louder or closer to the mic? You're a little bit your volume a little bit low. Yeah, that's a little bit better. You're gonna have to talk a little louder. And yeah, Arjun saying is these two are if you guys are subscribed to the Patreon, there was an episode that we did. There's one episode we did, one episode that's coming out. The first episode was about Khalsa metaphysics, where my background in all of this is Western academia. These guys are obviously like in Sampradayik academia, let's call it. And so we were having a conversation about like the depth of Sikh philosophy through metaphysics, which is in the Western world, that's like Hume's, Berkeley, Kant. Those are the only names I can think of right now. And that conversation was very illuminating. And Chillin, you had said, like, did you ever think that Sikhi would be this in depth or like have this much of a deep philosophy? And I remember thinking, like, I felt like it was always there, but the fact that you guys brought it to light was like very interesting. That like it's not as like the information there is there, the knowledge is there. It's just not being like given to the people, right? But they are still like bad hat going to Gurdwara and like just listening to whatever Sakhi, whatever bullshit Sakhi that the Kathavachik is saying and stuff. But you guys really elucidated that. And then the second call we got into extrapolating. I don't know how to say this. Like, I don't want to say just jurisprudence, but like extrapolating law from a Khalsa perspective. Like, what does that look like? I personally do not agree with humanism. I don't agree with freedom of speech. I don't agree with a lot of this stuff. And the Sikh perspective kind of, I'm not saying he's in agreement with me, but it's like the Sikhi does kind of, true speech, all this kind of stuff. So it was cool. And these guys are like really, they're my go-to when it comes to questions in the Discord. Arjun Singh and Chillin answer multitudes of questions for people. I'm pretty sure they're getting annoyed at that by now. Just kidding. And so, yeah, man, you tell us, like, what you think about some of this stuff. We'll just start cooking slowly, We're just warming up a little bit. So what do you guys think about this whole, like, philosophical framework that's happening in the Panth and why it's lagging so much? Because you guys are actually, like, facts. I talk shit, but you guys have facts.
So first of all, I'm gonna just say, I don't know if I should feel cursed or feel blessed to be on this podcast. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. And in terms of philosophy, I come from I love history. I love understanding epistemology. So, first things first is, today we're gonna have to step up our game. We got to step up our game because there's just like if we don't, we're gonna fall behind. Apologetics is stepping up. You see people like Muhammad Hijab. You see people like these Christians, West Huff, for example, and they're doing really, really good. They're doing amazing. And when it comes time for questions about Sikhi, we have nothing to back it up. We have nothing to say, and the things that we say is so outdated. It just doesn't catch up. It doesn't amount to the questions, the logic used that individuals like this like these guys have.
Can you give an example of like the outdatedness? Because to like add more context, right? So Muhammad Hijab just debated in Oxford Union, which is like, if you make it to that level, like that's a big deal.
Yeah,
and he
that's a big
debated
deal.
destiny, which is kind of jokes, but they debated the morality that's gotten from Islam versus atheism, which is like actually a high level of like philosophical idea, right? Objective morality, et cetera, et cetera. And then Alex O'Connor was on the Diary of the CEO podcast debating a Christian. He debated what was that guy's name? The guy, the Hindu guy, or like I forgot him, that guy, and then one other guy, right? And Alex O'Connor's atheist, one of the guys was Christian, one of the guy was coming from like a Vedantic perspective, and then et cetera, et cetera. So,
mystic,
yeah. So can you give me an example of like where even though we have a Dunga, like a deep level philosophy, where if they said this point, they would get cooked instantly? Something that you have come across.
Okay, so for example, you know, in some of my debates with Muslims, you know, Muslims will ask, you know, so what we say, oh, man and God can become one, right? That's such a simple way to put it. They'll ask, how can that be? Because each thing has its own identity. God has its own identity, man has its own identity. It's the law of identity, right? And so, you know, someone might not know how to answer that, but because of my background in Vedant, I knew that okay, this is Vibharik and this is Padmarak and this is, you know, and then I'm like, wait, in Gurbani it comes Sagar Mahabund Bunda Mahasagar. There's two different identities there. There's the ocean, there's the droplet. The droplet knows how to be a droplet. The ocean knows how to be an ocean, right? The ocean has tsunamis, and the drop just knows how to drop. And then I thought about it, and then I'm like, wait, how do I do this? And then I'm like, wait, so you all three of us here, we have different names, right? You got Arjun, you got you, right? You guys are two different people. You guys have two different identities. And what's behind those identities? You both are human, right? What about you and a cat? A human and a cat. You both have two different identities. A cat is a cat. A human is a human. Based on its qualities, it has different behavior. But what's behind that? Both of you are mammals. What about mammals and reptiles? Both of you have vertebrae, right? So the deeper you go into identity, to the fundamentals of identity, you come to realize that there's one identity. And we call that Sat-Chit-Anand, existence, consciousness, and bliss. And we will go deeper into what these mean, but that's just an example. So where did I get those? Where was I able to defend against that? Because of Vedant, because of my background in it. If I didn't know that and I just took Sikhi for his face level, I wouldn't have an answer for that, right? You also got to be quick thinking on the spot as well. But there's just so many things that we, you know, there's just so much history to our, so much intellectual history that we have as a Panth that is just so untapped. I think Kotha Guru writes that there's like 1,500 grunts of Nirmale that is just unread, untouched, right? And Arjun Singh can kind of attest to that. And I'm gonna, you know, speaking of Arjun Singh, I'm gonna pass it on to you now. What do you think?
We're talking about about interfaith dialogue, with Vedant and all these aspects and how they play a really integral role. I think one thing which I think Lovepreet has really brought to light is the fact that, as you said, because I knew Vedant, because I knew that essentially the ocean and the droplet aren't two different things. For example, that example from Gurbani, Sagar mein hai boond, boond mein hai sagar. Within the ocean exists a droplet. In the droplet exists the ocean. And what you find is that the reality of Sikhi is layered. There isn't just one reality in the sense, obviously, there is this aspect of one true supreme reality, but there are different layers to reality. And in many ways, your perception creates reality. The way that you perceive the world becomes the world for you. And, one example I love to give is the example of the sun. From this level of reality, from this empirical level, from this relative kind of level of reality, what you find is that we see the sun setting, we see the sun rising. But in reality, if we look from the sun's perspective, he isn't rising, he isn't setting. And you can't say one is completely false because you are still seeing that reality. We still see the sunrise, we still see the sunset. So the reality of Sikhi is layered, and that's why Gurbani can be so deep. In some aspects of Gurbani, you'll find this dualistic attitude of, the Pagat and Bhagavan, of the devotee and the object of devotion, which is Paramatma, which is the Guru. And in some aspects, you find, the tables turning to this completely radical non-dualism, hai where the Guru says, ek tui, there is only you, there is only you. There is
Ast
nobody.
ek digar koi.
Hanji,
Ast
hanji.
ek, meaning existence. In existence, there's
Exactly.
only.
So there is only you. I think that's a really big aspect. And when it comes towards debating with, different, faiths and people, like, for example, I have talked to Muslims before. And what I find is for them to grasp this idea of reality being layered, reality not being as simple as we make it out to be, is really difficult in the sense that, you know, many people, because of different cultures, because of the way that they've been indoctrinated, they can't think beyond this idea of, like, you know, there being this one God up in the seventh heaven, and he's controlling everything. He's looking after everybody, and, you know, he gets angry at somebody, he becomes, you know, happy when he sees somebody, or he's happy on a certain group of people, and he's, you know, he's angry towards a certain group of people, you know. So uh, that kind of idea of Sikhi having layered reality, you know, is really interesting, and it's something which not many people understand, not many people are able to recognize, you know. So, you know, that's one thing I have seen. And modern day, like, you know, because I live in the UK, and we all know about Speaker's Corner, we all know about all the different things that happen in the UK. And there's a lot of Muslims, a lot of Christians, even a lot of times you'll find some Sikhs coming to Speaker's Corner. And when they debate, you can see that because they don't have an actual understanding of Sikh philosophy, they haven't actually understood what Sikh philosophy is. They just go by of what is written face value. Oh no, we are, you know, we just believe in helping everybody. We just believe in Sarabadda Pala. We just believe in helping everybody, that the whole, you know, earth is just one big family. And all the concepts they touch are all either, like, you know, political, or they're very, very physical, in the sense of, oh, we don't eat meat, we don't do this, we don't eat that. It's never going into philosophy. It's never diving into what Sikhi is actually, what Sikhi believes in. And when people do go into Sikh philosophy, they really Christianize it. You know, they turn it into this, like, they turn it into Puritanism. Hai. You know, they have a very puritanical take on Sikhi, like a very missionary idea.
The
And
because
Hanji,
the thing is right is if you don't know your own beliefs, other people will tell you what your beliefs are.
Exactly. Exactly.
And look at how methodical the British figured our shit out. They had guys, you know, translating the Guru Granth Sahib, right? The Ernst Trump Granth, I believe, is one of them. They had McAuliffe writing about this stuff. Like, they had guys that literally went in there to surgically understand Sikhs. We couldn't even do that to ourselves, right? All Sampradas are like, we're doing our own thing, blah, blah, blah. We're cut off, we're divided. But they could see the whole picture, which is like a genius of just their ability to do something at that level, which obviously, like, we don't have, right? We can't even bridge the gaps between our own Sampradas, our own philosophies, our own understandings of other people. But, you know, 150 years ago, it was already done. The British had figured it out, right? That, like, a lot of what we even know about, like, Sikhi from back in the day, not a lot, but a very, like, you get a secondhand information is from the British, because of the fact that they went in and their observations. Oh, the Akali Nihangs, they do this. Or the Seva Panthis do that. The Nanak Panthis do this. They drew these guys as well, right? Like, we didn't even do that part of our history, right? I always look at it like philosophy dictates your society through the underbelly of art and culture. And we don't know our philosophy, so our culture is this is the biggest problem today. Our Sikhi is basically hinged on Punjabi culture, not Sikh culture. There's a difference between the two. We don't even know what Sikh culture really is yet, but we do know what Punjabi culture is. So we've been able to basically have this, like, visor, this, like, the sheen over Punjabi culture, and be like, this is what Sikhi is, right? Yo, we all hate, okay, we don't hate, but, like, we all goof on the 3HO, right? But Yogi Bhajan had a very good observation that, like, yo, these Punjabis are gonna, like, drop the ball with Sikhi. Like, these guys are not they are not the heirs, they're not the heirs of Sikhi. Like, these Punjabis, they're gonna just lose it, right? This like dipper Punjabi stuff is not the move, and so that's the issue that I believe we're seeing today, in totality. Chillin,
Yeah.
you're on the ground. What do you think?
So mainly, most of our history coming from the dawn of colonization has been identity making, and still we're stuck in the identity making phase. What do I mean by identity making? Identity making meaning that we're searching for our boundaries. We keep looking for, we're not this, we're not that, we're not Hindu, we're not Muslim, we're this, we're that. Most of our Sikhi has been just focused on saying we're Sikh, we're Sikh, we're Sikh, we're Sikh, nothing else. What that creates is an empty shell. We have an empty shell right now. We used to be good. We used to be fine. The reason why we used to be fine was because, before colonization, our sampradaya mostly agreed with each other. Mostly, when it came to philosophy. When it came to the philosophy of Guru Nanak, they mostly agreed with each other. And then after, colonization, you have these scholars who are Western educated coming up with ideas to kind of bind Sikhi into this mold. I think Harjot Oberoi, in his construction of religious boundaries, he writes that, in 300 years of history, the Sikhs, the way that, the Tat Khalsa in the 1880s began forming a Sikh identity, in 300 years, we never had that, right? So they're creating these implicit ideas of what Sikh religion is, right? And you mentioned that the British studied us. I think that the British could never understand us. The British made up all these categories of pantheism, panentheism, blah 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 blah, monotheism, but they couldn't understand us. Why? Because we don't fall into any of those, right? And the sampradaya have answers. And you might be coming that, what do you mean sampradaya have answers? Sampradaya, all I've heard was bad about them, right? Yeah, sampradaya have done things that have failed Sikh society, such as believing in the caste system, right? But it's you know, yeah, sure, we're not perfect. We're not perfect. No one's history is perfect. Everyone's history has things that they want to keep hidden. However, the philosophy that the Sampradaya have, in my understanding, in my anecdotal evidence, like on the ground, it served me well, right? You have reformist ideas from the Singh Sabhas. Those don't stand well, especially against the monotheism of Islam and Christianity, because those Singh Sabha ideas try to push Sikhi as ethical monotheism. They don't stand well. And when you push Advaitavad, non-duality, that the Sampradaya push, those ideas stand well.
Yeah,
That's
but
my
but but
experience.
the thing is, the Singh Sabha is like to give them credit and to also shit on them simultaneously. Like they were stuck between a rock and a hard place, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They
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 they did their best.
they passed the buck on to the future, thinking that we could better untangle it, which was a mistake and
Yeah.
short-sightedness on their part. But they also kind of did save us from the like India by this time was operating on full identity basis. So unless they like did a complete surgical removal, we would have amalgamated fully. You would have
Yeah, they
seen.
had to. They had
So
to.
they had to do that. But the thing was, is
Yeah.
they did throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Yes,
You
yes.
have
As Pashora sings, his whole article is about that, throwing out the baby on Dasam Grant. That's what throwing the baby out with the bathwater is the way that we can kind of understand what happened. They threw the baby out with the bathwater. There's many societal evils that existed within the community back then, and the Singh Sabha was working hard to remove them. But while doing so, they, you know, a lot went missing.
yeah, like
And
they completely destroy layman Sikhi. You know, Sikhi today is everyone has to take Amrit, and they call it Amrit instead of Khandidipol to be a Sikh. It's completely. It's like, okay, they understood. The thing is, they're at a high level of understanding this stuff, but the problem is that the way they're doing the understanding of this stuff causes insane grief. So you have the AKJ Samprada coming up with some really crazy conclusions, and then they're going with that, and then identity becomes like, this isn't the gurus that said this. These Singh Sabha movement people decided that our identity is bound by you having to take Khandidipol, which means that
yeah,
average people that would just be like, yo, like, where's the Nanak Panthi presence? Where's the Seva Panthi presence? Where are the all these guys presence in the Panth anymore? It's like, no, you guys just aren't part of it because you guys aren't. We have rigidly defined identity instead of understanding the fluidity of human beings in general.
One more thing I'd like to, butt in is that, when it comes towards the British and the Sampradaya, one thing which really is fascinating is the first complete commentary or translation to the Guru Granth Sahib was actually, done by Ernest Trump, Hana. You had the first English translation before you even had the first Punjabi complete translation of the Guru Granth Sahib. And the first Punjabi translation was actually done in response to Ernest Trump by the means of the Faridkot Tika. And when you read the Faridkot, in the beginning, in the preface, Gyani Badan Singh, he actually says that we did not, the Sampradayas never wanted to actually put this teaching into writing because they believe that you're limiting Gurbani by putting a straight single meaning on what Gurbani is saying. That this tradition is Sina Basina. And as, Arvind Palnande translates that, he says mind to mind. Sina Basina is mind to mind. So, that tradition was much more based upon a very like personal aspect of the teacher and the disciple. And even when we look at Guru Granth Sahib Ji, people trying to make it out to be that Guru Granth Sahib Ji was made for the, masses. That every single random Joe on the road could read Guru Granth Sahib Ji. In reality, that was not the case. Not everybody was literate enough to read Gurbani at that time. And the other aspect is that, Gurbani has been written in a certain way. Gurbani has been written in a certain way that without actual teaching on how certain words are formed, of how to split certain words in those larivar sroops, it becomes really hard to understand. So, the way that so it's really interesting that the Sampradayas, their view of Gurbani, their view of, preserving the teachings was much more on a personal, teacher-disciple level. And what you find is modern day, kind of Sikh community have actually destroyed that relationship, that Ustad-Shish relationship, that Ustad-Shagird relationship of a teacher and a disciple. And what more you find is that within these sampradayas, it was much more of a personal connectionship. It was much more of a personal kind of, guided understanding of Gurbani. Hana? And, even sadhana, even practicing meditation upon Gurbani, of how to meditate on Gurbani, how do you meditate on the Mool Mantra, how do you do all these different things. So I think that the Singh Sabha, or the consequences of the Singh Sabha destroy this relationship of the Ustad and the Shish. And essentially, I think that's something which, the Sampradayas have tried to maintain, but even there, it's not as what it was before.
See, this is I do want to maybe give some pushback because not my assumption. I agree with the Ladivad part, right? But the way I always looked at it was that from the get-go, and we had this conversation with Chillin, right, a while ago, and I really liked how it. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji starts his Udasis and starts pushing Barney and teachings to the world in a masculine and feminine way. The masculine way is through logic, deduction, rationality, debate, argument. The feminine way is through aesthetics, music, and beauty, right? These are feminine traits that you could talk about. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji is doing it as a whole, right? Both he can talk with you and debate with you, but he can also make you fall in love with the word, with the Naam. And I agree that going into the depths of Guru Granth Sahib because of the way it was written, Ladivad, does facilitate the need of a student-teacher relationship, right? And this is something the Buddhists have as well, right? In Vajrayana Buddhism, tantric practices have to be given to you by a guru, like a guru. That is literally what it is, right? Because the layman cannot just come across these practices or these ideas and follow them to the highest level. It just becomes too much of it becomes too much of a mind fuck, right? So you do need the student-teacher relationship. But where I think Sikhi delineates from that is if you read Japji Sahib, and I don't know what the word for like the terminology of this is, it's very easily graspable just by hearing it. The points are very simplified and you can, and I always say this, you can go into like crazy PhD level depth on Japji Sahib alone, and Guru Granth Sahib starts with Japji Sahib, which is like another like a thing. And I think I heard them once say like the rest of Guru Granth Sahib is basically an expansion. It's like the DLC of Japji Sahib. It expands upon the principles that Japji Sahib is laying down, and even the Mool Mantra itself. And I would say is like you know, when you listen to Japji Sahib, even the illiterate, right, they just can't read, but they can still understand, can still interface with these ideas that Japji Sahib is giving out, right? Like if I read you a few sentences from like Kant's critique of pure reason, you would just be like, what the fuck? Like even I'm listening, I can read it and you're still like, I have no clue. But when you hear like lines from Japji Sahib, right? Like Sasyan pa lakh hoita ek na chale naal, right? Hundreds of thousands of clever tricks, but not even one of them like to somebody who's farmed all their life and is a complete like who doesn't even know what a book is, that line can still hit you. You feel what I'm saying? And so I
Yeah.
think I think there's the divide there, right? That there's to go into depth, you need the student teacher relationship because there's unearned wisdom that somebody can have just by doing it themselves. But there's also
Yeah.
the layman can get such a expansive
No,
experience.
definitely.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
one more thing I'd like to. Sorry, before मैं थोड़ा करना लूँगा, but एक कोई चीज़ मैं कहनी थी. I think I really agree with that, and my response to that is that I completely agree. I think Gurbani, it serves not only the intellectual, but it also serves those which are, you know, just laymen. I think that is a very good reason. And what I think is, like, you know, if you look at Gurbani and how it makes things accessible, you know, for example, if you read the, you know, Sampradai, the traditional commentaries on Japji Sahib itself, when it starts with Oankar, one thing is noted is that if you look at the Dharma Shastras, if you look at the Hindu texts on law and Hindu texts on philosophy, those which are not of the three Varnas, those which are not Kshatriya, not from the warrior caste, not from the priestly caste, the Brahmin class, and not from the Vaishya, the businessman class, they could not actually, people which were not from that, people which were Shudra, which were of lower caste, could not actually even pronounce Om. They had no adhikar, they had no actual authorization to chant Om or to say Om. And even women as well, because women would not be given, you know, the rights to actually, you know, even study certain scriptures or even, you know, chant certain mantras or whatever. And the guru, by putting ik oankar, by putting ik in front of oankar, he essentially makes it accessible for the entire world. And there's a lot of aspects like that. And I think the beauty of Gurbani lies that, you know, certain texts, like for example the Vedas, they cannot be, you know, they have restrictions on who can study them, who can't.
Mm-hmm.
And Aam Banda, even if you're like, you know, trained a little bit in Hindi or whatever, you still can't understand what the Vedas are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is that, you know, those scriptures require a lot of understanding of different things to actually even get into them. There's a certain style of chanting, there's a certain this or this, and they're not accessible to the Aam Banda, nor are they accessible to the layman except for the priestly class. So I think what Gurbani does is Gurbani caters to both. You can get a really deep, a really profound understanding of philosophy from Gurbani, but you can also take really simple, practical things which you can imply in your, you know, which you can, you know, apply in your life. So I think I really agree with that. I think Baba Lovepreet was going to say something, so I'd love to listen. Anji.
Everyone's just pronouncing me by so many different names, man.
That's
Kadi
on you,
Chelli
man.
and
That's a maestro. How about that one? Should we bring that name
No,
back,
no,
huh?
no, no, no,
Maestro?
no, no.
All right.
That's okay.
Okay.
But so just pointing off of Arjun Singh, just bouncing off of him, you know, Gurbani, even, you know, Guru Amrita Sahib Ji Shabd, Jaise Dharti Uppar Meghala, right? I forget the rest. But, you know, the point of that whole Shabd is that, you know, you have clouds in the sky. And why are there clouds in the sky? Don't Isn't there water within the earth as well? Right? Why is there rain coming down? That's the question. So if we have such deep knowledge already within the Upanishads, such deep knowledge already contained within Buddhist scriptures and Buddhist ideas and etc., or even Sufis, right? So Sufi ke Rekartya, they have so much, right? Wahadat and stuff like that. So if there's, you know, so much knowledge out there, then what was the point of Sikhi? And people always ask that. If Sikhi is just people always debate, is Sikhi a continuation of the Vedas? Is it a continuation? Is it a new revelation? Things like that. And well, hopefully we can get into that. So, you know, Mara says, no, just like rain is easily accessible. Not everyone can drink, not everyone can reach the water that's in the earth. Not everyone can reach that. So what Gurbani has done is taken all that deep knowledge about the self and, you know, gave it out. It gave it out to the masses through the vernacular. Vernacular meaning like languages that everyone reads, right? The languages that everyone knows. Ek roop saglo pasara. What's so hard to understand about that? One form, everything. All expansion is all one form, right? So it's taking such deep knowledge and allowing those that could never access it due to caste, maybe, right? That Khatri Brahman Sudvas, what was the pankti
Upadesh
again?
chaho varna ko sanja.
Upadesh, gaya fir? What was the pankti?
Upadesh chaho varna ko sanja.
Upadesh Jahan. Shit, I
Varna
can't
ko.
remember it. Yeah. So you have that's not the there's so many pankti, that's not the pankti I had in mind. There's so many pankti. The point is that the Gurbani says it so many times, right? And it's multiple. It's always coming in, right? It's always coming in that this is for everyone. This is for everyone. This is for everyone. You'll find pankti where it says like metaphors that whether you're a good person or you're a bad person, the fire is going to warm you the same, right? Same thing with Gurbani. Gurbani is going to treat you the same. The Guru shelter is going to treat you the same. The sky is above all people, right? And Gurbani is going to treat you the same,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's going to give you the same teachings. Is whether you're smart, whether you're unable to understand intellectually, is going to take you down the same path, which goes back to this argument that I was going to say, that is Gurbani philosophical and does it have a consistent philosophy, right? We can say one thing, right? And I give credit to Nikki Gunandakor for saying this one time. I was at her lecture, and she says God and the experience of the divine is not supposed to be conceptualized. So whether you have Western theology in the same way that the Singh Sabha dudes use it, or you have um, Vedanta, or whether you have Patanjali. Some people understand Gurbani through a yogic lens. Oh, the chakkar this, chakkar that, and stuff like that, right? We were talking about it, me and Arjun. So you, it's meant to be understood through an immediacy, through an aesthetic, which is beyond anything that's conceptual. Conceptually, we're making these concepts up ourselves. We're making these concepts. We're trying to understand what is Sargun, what is Nirgun, this and that. We're dividing the world into categories, you know, and different cultures around the world have different categories. And that's why when the British came to try to understand Indian religions, they couldn't really understand what is going on here because we had different logic. We had Nyaya logic, a five-step logic, which is different than the deduction methods of, Socrates and that whole, lineage of knowledge. And so you have like so many differences from culture to culture that just haven't been translated well, and then you kind of see what Sikhis kind of get. It's like a whole little paradox. Everyone's trying to understand Sikhi through concepts, but Sikhi is telling us to go beyond concepts. Sikhi is dealing with Muslims and yogis and Vedantis and Vaishnavas within Gurbani, and is going beyond all of these concepts, and is bringing unity to diversity. Yet we're here sitting stuck in our diversity, not being able to understand each other, right? Still
One thing
fighting
I
amongst
think
ourselves.
is, sorry.
Go on, go on.
One thing I've seen is that, like, as Lovepreet said, that essentially, what's happening is Gurbani is harmonizing a lot of these different conflicting traditions. Um, Even when it comes towards, like, one very big debate in Indian philosophy, which is what leads to liberation? Is it gyan? Is it wisdom? Or is it karam? Or is it action? है ना? You had certain philosophies which believed only by the means of action you can attain God. For example, bhakti, or say, for example, even rituals. You had the Mimamsakas, which were certain philosophical system of India, which believed that only by dharma, only by ritual, you could attain liberation. And they start their text off with athato dharma jigyasa. They believed only by dharma, only by following the rituals and rites of the Vedas, you can attain liberation. So, what leads to liberation? Is it action, or is it knowledge? And the Guru says, "Jnana hai karana karma abhyas." है ना? Jnana bhayat hai karma hai nas. And the Guru says essentially that by the means of action, gyan is born. है ना? By the means of bhakti, which is an action, or by the means of karma, gyan, wisdom is born. And from that wisdom leads to moksha. That wisdom leads to mukti, liberation. And what you find is, even in Gurbani itself, if we look at all the different authors, and now you've got Sheikh Farid, from a very Sufi kind of, from a very esoteric understanding of Islam. You have people like Surdas, which was which was a disciple of Vallabhacharya, which is a completely different philosophical school of India, which don't even believe in the concept of Maya. They don't even believe in the concept of Maya. You have
Shuddhadvaita, right?
Shuddhadvait.
Yeah.
You have, Ramanand, which is a very Vishishtadvaiti, a qualified non-dualism, which which take the Jeev and Ishwar, take the individual and God to be, different yet the same,
Parts
like
of a
the
whole.
rays of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what the Guru does is the Guru harmonizes them. And one more thing which I think is really interesting from a very Sampradayic aspect is that there is something in the Sampradas called Adhikari Ped, है ना? Difference in relation to, seekers. So there's different levels of seekers, there's different understandings of certain seekers. है ना? Some people may not have this, kind of, may not be attracted towards this intellectualism. है ना? And the Guru prescribes a path of bhakti, of devotion, and for some people which are very, intellectual, which just have that kind of idea of gyan, the Guru provides the path for them. And for people, the layman, the Guru provides the path of seva, to do seva. So Gurbani, being simplistic and very profound, has an actual meaning. At least that's what I've been able to understand so far. And it's that the Guru is giving different upadesh, is giving different teaching based upon your own avastha, based upon your own state of mind, your own spiritual state, and he's giving different ideas, different teaching to different people. And you know and like, obviously I understand that Gurbani isn't saying that you need this to qualify as a Sikh, you don't need this to qualify as a person on the path of spirituality. But Gurbani does also say Vina guna kite bhagat na hoy. If you don't have certain qualities, you can't perform bhakti, you can't perform certain, you can't walk on the path of devotion. So, it's not that, the Guru is saying that you don't need to do anything, and just take Amrit and you're done. But the Guru is saying you have to have certain qualities. You have to have certain things which you've already attained to walk on this path. And so I think, that's a really interesting part of Sikhi, which is, that Gurbani layered reality and the fact that Gurbani is catering to different people.
So, one thing I find interesting about Sikhi is the fact that our starting Guru Granth Sahib starts with a number. Right? I don't think that there's any other religion, dharma, or anything. Maybe you guys know of one where the first akkar, the first character, is a number, and then obviously it's Oankar. Obviously, I'm saying that wrong, but I don't care. You get the point. And I recently, this is so funny, I came across a video of Muhammad Hijab debating Fresh and Fit. Okay, and one of the guy, I think the guy who's Fresh or whatever, he goes, why is 2 + 2 4? Why does 2 + 2 = 4, right? And Muhammad Hijab goes, it's a tautology. And then I started thinking about it, that is Guru Granth Sahib Ji not in essence tautology based upon that first sequence of characters, the first two, the one and the Oankar? Because the rest of, if we believe oneness, right? We believe, and I'm of that belief as well, the Advaita, the non-dualistic nature, right? Then expounding the expounding upon the Ik Onkar idea is a tautology, because it's basically you're saying the same thing twice, right? A tautology, for those people who don't understand, is like if you said like that's a free gift. Well, the fact that it's a gift, in essence, is what makes it, is the same understanding that it would be free. And the rest of Barney is basically reiterating what the first two characters were of Ik Oankar. It's not
Exactly.
further telling you something more than that. It's a tautology. It is almost like a mathematical equation where the rest of Barney is 2 + 2 and Ik Oankar is equals.
The Oankar is the multiplicity. That's the
100%.
Triguna Maya, right? That's the the world splitting up from one. Everything that is we see in multiplicity is actually unified, by the God. or by the ik, depending on how you see it, right? So everything is being unified. Everything has this fundamental existence that's shared, one and the same, and that's what ik Oankar is saying,
But
right? And that's what Gurbani is getting into then, and then it just explains that through different ways.
I
now,
think also, maaf kariyo, I think, as you said, oneness and multiplicity, but, and when it comes to multiplicity, it's like, as Lovepreet Singh or Oscar Singh knows, is that, in
So
Gurbani
many
you have,
names.
based upon obviously meanings is a whole different. Like, you could go on and on about one God, but
Yeah.
like even fundamental ideas like the waking, dreaming, deep sleep. Like when we say Tragun, when we say the three modes of Maya, we always think of it as something
Yeah.
abstract, which is far away, which is up there somewhere. But in
Yeah.
reality, Tragun is something we're living in day to
We're living
day.
in. Yeah.
When you wake up in the morning, you're sitting down and you're single-mindedly, devoting yourself. You're performing a form of meditation. You're in a state of subtle, of purity. You know? And when you start to, when your mind starts to become a bit more active and it starts to become a bit more, here and there, wandering, then it gets into a state of rajas, of activity. And then after all that activity, you become tired, Hana? And then you want to go sleep. And then that becomes inertia, that becomes tamas, that becomes tamogun. So, these concepts aren't just theoretical ideas, it's a lived reality. It's something which you are seeing day to day. And
Yeah.
not only the Dragon, but it's also reflecting the waking, the dreaming, the deep sleep. Because all God is made up of four characters. Hai Akar, Ukar, Mukar. And to be very simple, A-U-M. And there's a small kind of half M sound. There's a small kind of nasalization, which is called the Ardbind. And so essentially it's made up of these four things. So basically A-U-M, Om, and that becomes Om. And so these three characters are reflecting not only the Dragon, not only the three modes of Maya, but they're also reflecting the waking, the dreaming, the deep sleep. And it's also reflecting the actual essence, the actual witness of all these different states, which is the fourth character of Oankar. So Oankar is, just Ikko Oankar, you can go on and on, but, as you said, Gurbani starts with one. It's a really interesting thing. In Indian philosophy, there's something called Vyaghata dosh. When you start off with something and you end on a completely different note.
mhm.
And that is seen as a dosh. That is seen as a defect. So, when the guru starts with ik, it doesn't only mean that the guru is, just saying Ikko Oankara, there is only, oneness. He's putting oneness there to show that it also ends on oneness as well. It starts on oneness, it also ends on oneness. So
Yeah.
even these different elements of Indian tradition you find within Gurbani, and you can really interpret or see the beauty of Gurbani, in that way.
Yeah. The interesting thing, right, is like I always used to hear that like people would talk, and this when I was younger, right? This is the one thing that Taksal ever got right. No, I'm just joking. Was that if you could do years, billions of years of katha on just ik own God, like that one word is dense enough because of the fact that again, like you are talking about existence, reality, like you can just keep on going. And me and Chillin, we're working on the trad Khalsa Koans right now with the art, and me and Chillin had a conversation about. There's two things here I wanna talk
And I
about
was
in
working on
relation.
it. I'm like, I thought you said I was working on it. I was like,
No,
what?
no, no. We're
My
I
bad.
was working on it, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there was a conversation we had about art because I love art. Right, your background's
Mm.
history, mine's art history. I think art pushes civilization more than any other any other marker. And we were coming to the conclusion that if somebody's true expression of something, if you remember this conversation, if they're drawing a tree, right? But even though they have their own stylistic approach to it, right? So like Picasso has a very different style, Cezanne has another style, Basquiat has another style. But if they all draw the same tree, is one of their paintings more correct? Are all their paintings wrong, or are all their paintings right? And I think with the Sikh lens of philosophy thinking, you would have to say that each one of their paintings is a true expression of how they're viewing reality. Therefore, it is true. And if anything is true, It is therefore divine.
In the same way, we have a God, a divine that, right? Something that we cannot define. But it's there. It's the metaphysical origin of everything. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
That much we know, but we cannot define it. That's why we call him Agam, Agochar, beyond incomprehensible, beyond any understanding. Vismad, wonderful. That's why we say Vaheguru,
Mm-hmm.
right? Meaning wow, right? Because we can't define it. However, we all, in our minds, each and every individual has a thought, has a conception of that God. Each culture has a conception of that God. Each, whether that's even polytheistic, or it's monotheistic, or it's closer to us, or anything. Each culture around the world has this conception of that God, and what Gurbani does is it brings cultures together, and that's why Guru Gobind Singh Ji writes, Hindu Turk ko Rafji Imam Safi Manas ki Jat Sabha ek hai pehchanabo. Meaning that you have Hindu, you have Muslim, then you have Sufi, not Sufi, you have Shia, then you have Sunni. So you have all these divisions about understanding God, all these different religions, but then Maharaj says that they're all one and the same, actually, right? And Maharaj later says, "Desan ke pramao hai," that these changes are not because of any different God that they believe in, but because they have cultural differences. That these divisions don't really exist outside of their intersubjective realities, right? And that they're experiencing or coming towards the same reality that everyone around the world is, right? And that's the message of Gurbani, right? Someone says Khuda, someone says Allah, someone says Ram, right? Someone says Gobind, right? These are all our personal gods that we have, that we've created as reflections of our societies, reflections of our own minds. But then there's something there that's beyond everything, and we call that soul, right? Bin gur preet na upja, hum main mail gavaye, sohang aap pachaniye. Sohang aap pachaniye, sabd pet patiye. Through the shabd, through the guru, we can find this soul, that thing that is my true existence.
But okay, my bad. But here's
Go
the
ahead.
thing, right? In the beginning of the conversation, you said that what's the difference between identity? Like, what's the difference between you and another person, and you and a cat, you and a
Mm,
reptile, right?
mm,
And
mm.
then obviously the scientific will just be like, yeah, everything is matter. So like, there
Yeah,
is like a bindingness of everything. But I also
yeah.
believe now that the Sikh version of this, right, that
Mm,
connects, I think Arjun was saying about the different bhakti and ritualism and yoga and all this stuff is love, right?
mm,
Because even you said wisdom, right? Wisdom can help you on your path to realization. But like, what does the Western academia call love of wisdom? It's philosophy, right?
mm.
Philo is love.
Yeah.
Sophie, or actually Sophie is love. Fuck, whatever. One of them means love, right?
Mm,
And so the idea here is love, right? So when you're doing a ritual with true devotion and love, it's not an empty ritual. The problem is
mm.
that because you don't know why. This is my theory. Arjun's shaking his head a little bit. I don't know if he's
No, no,
disagreeing.
I agree. I agree.
Okay,
He's doing
okay,
the Indian. He's doing the
yeah,
Indian
okay,
head
okay.
shake.
So the thing
Yeah.
becomes is that when you do anything with love, right? Having wisdom is loving knowledge to the point that you're making it like a point to make it wisdom, right? Knowledge isn't just wisdom in itself. Wisdom is applying knowledge, right? So all these things in life, right? Like an architect that loves buildings, etc., etc. This is love manifest in what they're pursuing. It becomes their dharam, right? This is a conversation we have a lot of the time where dharam has had a very interestingly weird, like people are kind of, we think our dharam means this is our version of religion, right? That's kind of how people have classified what dharam means. But in another essence, I would say dharam is your way. Now, what is your way, right? Me and Arjun's dharam, even though we both are followers of Sikhi, doesn't mean that our dharam is the same. Our what's the word I'm fucking trying to come up with here? Our makeup of what drives us forward, right? And basically, like, our car requires love. That's the gas. But what's pushing it, right? What's the direction? Everyone has that differently, right? Like Basquiat, Picasso, expression of art was their love that they had for reality and how they expressed their love. We had an interesting conversation, and this is kind of funny. Obviously, you get this kind of stuff in the Discord about disabled people, right? Somebody in the Discord is talking about they have this client who is disabled, like deeply disabled. He has no concept of life or death. He has no concept of God, none of these things. And he has cancer. And the cancer, like putting him through treatment is agonizing him. But he doesn't really have a concept of pain, like being like, this hurts. Like he can't conceptualize that because of his disabilities. And so then the conversation ended up spiraling into, is somebody who's disabled when they're born in this June, are they cooked? Like they just have to come back? Or, and this is the point that I was saying is like, sometimes you meet people with Down syndrome or disabilities, right? Like I have people in my family who have disabilities, and I met people with Down syndrome, but sometimes they're oozing love. Like they have no understanding of any concepts of like they can't introspect, they can't contemplate. Obviously there's different levels of IQ and all that kind of stuff, especially when you are disabled. But this person, this let's take a Down syndrome person, right? Because that it gives a little bit more context. They love, they can give so much love, but they also aren't, they're not they're also almost living in an ascetic way, because they don't understand the evils of the world, and they're not divulging in them because they don't have any comprehension of them, but they can just love. And I asked Chillin a question yesterday. I know I always do a roundabout circle. This is how I think. I asked Chillin a question a couple of days ago, which is, if you love one another, right? A mother loves her child, a brother loves a sister, a friend loves another friend. Is that love not divine? If we are all one, the oneness of Akal Purakh, is that love that we manifest towards each other not a reflection of divine love? Because in Christianity, love is top down, right? Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you, forgives you. But I've always looked at Sikhi as a bottom up, right? In Abrahamics, the prophets at the top, or no, God's at the top, and the God chooses a prophet at random to basically become the prophet. Whereas I believe in Sikhi, a Brahmgyani or somebody like that, it's bottom up. You have the ability to get to that level through obviously a whole myriad of instructional spiritual discipline.
Yeah.
So
you touched on two important points, bro. You touched on two important points that are so important in relating us to the rest of the world and understanding what we are here, what we're supposed to do, right? And so we talked about love. And we've been talking about love a lot. What does love mean in Sakeen? How does Prema Bhakti or Prem, the concept of Prem, relate to oneness? Just put it like this. You like that, or you love that which you find has likeness to you. Right? If it's different from you, you won't like it. So love is that which unites. So we're talking about oneness. What's the most uniting thing than love? Love. Right? Love is the most uniting thing, because you have, like, when you're dividing people, you have hate. You have hate, right? And in the same way that Sheikh Farid writes, "Nafikka na galaye," right? Such that God exists within the hearts of everyone. Why would you even say something bad to someone? Because your lover exists within everyone, right? And if everyone is part of that same entity that you're worshiping, why would you go and speak badly to them, right? Why would you go and hurt them? It's our morality, and we touched upon this a few times in our conversation. Our morality is based off a realization that you and me are one and the same, that there's no point of me going and ruining your life in any way. You and me are one and the same. Jattar tattar dasa vaisa hoy phailyo anurag. Number two, that God exists everywhere as love. Love is a form of God, and love is a form of God that can be worshipped. Love is
I
a
think
form of God that can be embodied. Right? Go on.
I think with love also, I think love is a reflection, Hannah, of
Mm.
your true self. And sometimes when it comes up, why did God create the universe? Hannah? This is one answer I love to give, which is that sugar can't taste sugar. Sugar by itself can't taste sugar. To taste sugar, you have to be different from sugar. Water can't taste water. Hannah. Water has to be different. You have to be different. You have to be in a duality to experience something. There has to be a subject-object relationship. Why does God manifest this world? To experience himself. To experience himself. And love is, it's such a pure experience. And even with love, even with the concept of love, you can link it back to the self. You can link it back to the true self, the true identity, in the sense that you love other people because they love you, है in the sense that if somebody envies you, if somebody if somebody slaps you in the face, you're not gonna have a bar, you're not gonna have this idea of love towards them. You love somebody because they respect you, at least, है or you have an idea that at some point they will, है so even love is a dualistic kind of practice. There is a lover, there is a beloved. And you know even with love, and maybe any emotion in the world, for example, when you love somebody, you feel this sense of anand, you feel this sense of bliss, है ना? And even that bliss is a reflection of yourself. It's a reflection of your bliss, your nature, which is bliss, which is Sat-Chit-Anand, which is existence, consciousness, bliss. You yourself are experiencing the reflection of yourself. It's like, you're looking at a reflection of yourself, and by seeing that, you're becoming, you're feeling all this bliss, you're feeling this love. So, as Babadi also said, love is a uniting factor, but also I think love is something which, also leads you back to the Atma. है ना? And I think the most purest form of love, because you said that, does worldly love, do worldly relationships or worldly love, does it reflect divine love? I think that it definitely, does to a certain extent. But what the path of love, which is a dualistic path, is doing is leading you to non duality. Divine love is leading you to non duality in the sense that you become so immersed in your lover, you become so immersed in the love of your lover, you become so crazy in the love of your lover. And like, Mera Bad Guru Gobinda, है ना? When you're sick, a doctor comes, you're saying, you can't fix me, है ना? Only my beloved can fix me. And that love, it leads you to a place where, like, even Sufi poets like Bulle Shah, they say, Ranja, Ranja, kardi ni main, ape Ranja hui.
Mm-hmm.
Chanting Ranja, 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 Ranja. I have myself become Ranja. है ना? That by the path of love, by, in this sense of loving devotion, again, Vaheguru, 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 everything has become Vaheguru. And once everything has become Vaheguru, I myself have realized I am not different from Vaheguru. I myself am Vaheguru. So, love is something which leads you to non-duality, divine love at least. है ना?
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna
that
jump in.
divine love is... Sorry.
I'm gonna jump in here real quick before you move on from this topic and getting into your other points. Remember your points, right? So make sure that you do. Tum tu karta tu hua mujh mein raha na hu. Right? That's an example of that love.
Anji.
Right? Love. There's two types of love in the world. There's conditional love. There's unconditional love. Right? And Arjun Singh just mentioned that sure, this love can be derived from that one true love, but what we find is that Vaheguru is existing throughout all creation, right? Vaheguru is existing, and the qualities of Vaheguru are seen through us as well, right? In the same way that we have Sat-Chit-Anand, existence, consciousness, and bliss, right? These are existing through us through certain means. Our whole lives, the human life, is based off of the pursuit of these three things. It's immortality, to exist, to not lose your existence. What about medicine? Medicine is something that we've researched. Science has gone through and seen how to elongate the human life. That's Sat. That's the search for Satya. Then you have the search for knowledge, the science, for physics, quantum physics. We're searching, why are we here? Philosophy. Everything is a search for, Chetan, to be conscious, to be aware of our existence. And then number 3 is bliss, pleasure, right? To feel good things. And these three things are the pursuit of human life. And out of these three, you have, each thing that we feel in our everyday lives, such as love, these are reflections of that divine reality, right? But our love is conditional. We only love each other once. We have a condition on that love. You give me this, you make me feel this way, and I'll love you, right? We have expectations for each other. But this divine love that Arjun Singh is mentioning, that he's talking about, it's unconditional. It is both a sadhana, meaning it is a path to God, right? Which comes through the Guru. bin gur preet na upaja. You know, this love only wells through the guru. And then once that preet comes, without the guru who's giving that love, then the home doesn't go, the sense of self, right? Because love
So
takes away the sense of self.
so
Hanji.
adding on to that, this may be not adding to that, but let's see where this goes. A mother loves their child, a husband loves the mother, or husband loves the wife, whatever. But there's a transaction there, right?
There's a transaction, yeah.
So even if it's unconditional, you have to, it's almost like your love needs to be able to bounce back to you, right? Even if it's not conditional, it's unconditional. You need to be able to experience your love being given. Okay?
Yeah.
This goes to Arjun's sugar can't taste itself example. But the highest form of a Khalsa is a Shaheed. And a Shaheed is basically loving God in a way that they're not actually truly feeling it. You're going through the most intense pain, right? As Dharam Singh would say, dukh, right? And the way a mother would die for their child, a person, a Khalsa, a Singh, a Shaheed, a martyr would die for God. Even though, you know, Jesus gets on the cross and says, God, why have you forsaken me, right? He says this. His love of God was never put into question. But
I wouldn't use that example for, but he does question it before in Matthew 26. He does question.
Okay,
I think
all right. Fuck that
23.
example. Fuck that example.
Yeah,
Let's use Shaheeds from the Panth, right? They actually that's a kind of a rip on them. My bad. I'm sorry, Christians. So you know, Shaheeds, Baba Deep Singh, whatever. They give their head for really love, right? Their love for God is so immense that even though God is not manifesting as a child that they're taking care of and they have to protect, it is such an elusive, intangible form. They're willing to die for it, right? They're willing to love. Their love knows no bounds because it can't even be reflected back to them the way relationships or whatever can be. So now the question here is this. Does that mean that love's truest, most purest form is not love, but consciousness? Because love is like emission. It anywhere you go in the universe, you are able to tap into consciousness, right? And this goes into a very trippy conversation about what consciousness is, right? But if we can define consciousness as love and a frequency you're either tapping in or tapping out of, then all of this becomes essentially like part of the process, part of the kale of existence itself. And consciousness is what's allowing you to either experience your love to higher levels or lower levels, right? Because, you know, I don't believe this statement I'm about to say, but, you know, people be like, well, love is just, you know, if you're talking atheists, love is just dopamine and chemical reactions happening in the body, right? But I don't believe that because, like, certain things make everyone tick, right? If everything was just that, right? Like, why is it that, you know, Arjun Singh's wearing orange and is following the path of this path, or, you know, Chillin's following another path, right? So I feel like, and obviously this goes, now we're going into metaphysical territory, right? Going love is consciousness and consciousness is love, right? Because, yeah, I don't have anything more than that. That's
you touched really cool ideas. You touched really cool ideas, especially that, like, okay, the things that we experience in this world, you know, are they just chemical or is there something deeper to them? So now we go into Kant, right? Noumenal and phenomenal. You can describe the phenomenal, you can describe the chemicals and the biology behind meditation and experience and love and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we still have stories. At the end of the day, we still have narratives. We still have a mind that somehow finds a consistent story to fall behind, right? And there's a long conversation and it's a fun conversation.
There's a lot of metaphysics
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
into, and it breaks people's brain a lot of the time.
It breaks people's brains, and it's cool. But what are we going to achieve out of it? Especially while we're talking about
the metaphysics.
No, but you could even go like and say, oh, you can't prove the existence of anything other than yourself. Like I think even Descartes says that.
You can't.
You know, it becomes like, you know, if you just get, you know, tangled into these things. But one thing I think You know,
But hold up,
you
I
said
do
which
want to
was
say is that the Panth does like there is sampradayas that do deal with this. It's not like,
Yeah,
oh,
they
this shit's too
they do
much
deal
for
with
us,
this.
boss,
No,
like
no, no.
Dipper. No, like
Uh, maybe,
they do flirt and go deep into the
yeah,
metaphysics of
yeah.
reality,
Maybe
and
later in this conversation we can talk about that. Like I keep
you know
pushing
one
things later, but we have a lot to go through essentially.
mhm.
one thing which you know Atheist said, which I think was really
It's E
interesting.
the first, man. It's E. It's not atheist. I'm not an atheist. It's
A-
E the first.
Atheist, atheist.
I'm not gonna lie, Arjun, I thought the same thing too,
You
bro.
guys, everyone
But so
thinks
you
I'm
know,
an atheist, dog. Like, what the fuck? Okay,
Yeah.
continue.
atheist,
Okay, E.
atheist.
Just say
Huh?
Yeah,
E. Just say
I thought it
E.
was pretty smart, atheist. I thought that
Just
was
say
pretty
E.
smart,
Just you say
but
E.
But you
E.
you
know,
just
I think
ruined it for
like
me.
you know one example I'd like to give is obviously some people believe in the Sarblo Granth, some don't.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I think the Sarblo Granth is it's a really interesting text in that it reflects on what some early Gursikhs thought. You know, at least you know, even if you don't want to attribute it to Guru Gobind Singh, it shows you what you know a lot of early Gursikhs their thinking, their reasoning, their beliefs were. And in Sarabalo, it's really interesting that when Sarabalo Avatar manifests, he comes to um, kill this demon. What's the demon's name? Madhu. Madhu. Nahi, nahi. Yaad hai Babari? Asa Singh ji. Who's the demon's name?
Is the
It's
demon's does the demon's name have a lot to do with? Hold on, let's just I can just try to find it. Actually,
who's
ChatGPT
the
is the shit,
demon?
man. Demon's
Anyway,
name.
so
Actually, fuck it. Whatever. Does the demon's name have any like double entendre things?
Birajanad. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Beat
Birajanad.
it, beat it not. Yes, yes,
So
beat it
when
not.
you look
Yes.
at the whole conversation between Sarabalo, which is a direct manifestation of God of Akal Purakh, with the demon God is about to kill, Sarabalo is about to kill, whose name is Birajanad. Sarabalo asked Birajanad, why have you destroyed all these families, killed so many people? You've destroyed nearly all these different realms. You've left nearly nothing. Why have you done this? What was the need of you to do all of this? And he said it was because of you. It was his love for Sarbalo in one way. That he did all of this. He killed so many people. He kicked all the devate, kicked all the demigods out of heaven. But why? Why did he kill so many people? Why did he do this? Why did he do that? It was because of Sarbalo. He said, now I'm in front of you that, I know that if I fight you, I'll be killed by you. And if I get killed by you, I'll attain liberation. So even that idea of love, the way that we picture love of a mother and a child, this can also be love. Going and killing 50 ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਹਜ਼ਾਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ killing so many
The
people, going to the heaven, ਚੱਕ ਲਓ, doing all these putte come. But at the end, to be killed by God and to be liberated, to merge into God, being killed by God, even a desire for that is a form of love. So I think the way that people picture love, I think love transcends what how we normally picture it.
I
And
I want to add to that because I wrote one. I wrote something from our conversation. I was gonna add to the koans, which is love even being your enemy, because I have one koan that is there's no enemies in death, and I have another one that is dig for the friends, dig for the foes, and I was having this thought of like what makes somebody our enemy? Do we go, hey, you don't believe, like, because other religions, other people, they go, hey, you don't believe what we believe, or you're not the people we want to be, we hate you, we want to fight you, right? And I believe in Sikhi, the idea based upon Guru Gobind Singh Ji's idea of like enemy is like, hey, I'm your friend. If you consider me your enemy, then fine, that's fine. Then I guess I'm your enemy. We'll brawl. But this koan is basically, I love even being your enemy. Like
I think
there is still love
even when you
in that fact based on what you're saying about Beatage not being killed by God and being like, yo, I'm down, bro. But the thing is you could
exactly.
but the thing is when I hear that, it reminds me of World War II, the Japanese. The Buddhists are telling them that it's dharam, that like your sword is hitting somebody and killing them. Like this is righteousness, right? And so that's the problem when you don't have enough of the context surrounding some of these things, it can become very destructive because then people be like, oh, this is how we show love by ending the lives of our enemies, right?
No, it's love is, you know, sometimes, and this is where we get into morality. like the expression of love, I mean, it's very vast. The reason why it's so vast is because, okay, me, you know, giving someone langar can be love. That I can be like, okay, I want to feed these people. Me also, hurting someone because they're doing these evil acts. Like let's look at Hitler,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's also love. Killing Hitler. Why? Because one, we're protecting the people that he's trying to hurt, and we're also protecting him from himself, from committing more evil, and putting that onto him, onto his own self, onto his
Mm-hmm.
own conscience, right? So, like, defeating an enemy in battle who's here to hurt your family, right, is also an act of love, both for your family and both for him. You're
Mm-hmm.
stopping him from doing something evil. You're also stopping your family from, suffering.
That's
So,
so interesting because
mm,
I've talked about this before. I had a shrooms trip and a guy I did it with just fucking lost his brains, and he was like
yeah,
full force coming at us naked, ready to attack us
mm,
because he just his shit. And I remember in that moment thinking like, this is my friend, but we need to knock him out right now.
exactly,
You
exactly.
know? And like
Yeah,
I love this guy. I have so much love for him, blah blah blah, but like
yeah,
I need to knock this guy out right now because
100%.
exactly.
like to save
You
him
know what,
from
buddy?
himself.
One more thing I'd like to add when it comes to love is that we define God on a very, to be very simple. You can say Sikhi sees God as Sat-Chit-Anand. It terms God into these into these three words which aren't actually distinct from each other. They're
Can you
actually
explain?
one.
Satanang Pranasi.
Can you explain what
Uh,
Sat Chit Anand is? Sat
so
being true.
Sat-Chit-Anand, Sat means existence.
Mm-hmm.
That for example, you say something exists, but that thing exists because of existence. There is existence, and that existence is called Sat.
Mm-hmm.
And to be, if I'm very technical, with my love for Sanskrit, Trikal abadhitam satyam, that which is beyond time, beyond Trikal, the three tenses of time, basically, that is called Sat. You've got Chit, which is consciousness. And if you look at the Upanishads say consciousness is tasya bhasa sarvam idam vibhati. That which, by that light, by which everything else is illumined. And consciousness is something which you can prove, in the sense that, if you're conscious of something, if something is cognizable, say for example, I can see this book. I can see this book. I'm cognizing this book. Hana. I'm aware of this book. That awareness, that sense of me being aware, is actually proving awareness. So God is consciousness. Hana. By God, everything else is illumined. And then Sat, Chit, and Anand. What is the nature of God? God is bliss. And when it comes to Anand, when it comes to bliss, again, you could even take Sat-Chit-Anand and put it into Ik Oankar Sat Gur Prasad. You can understand it in different ways. But when it comes to Anand, which is really interesting, is love and Anand are very connected. In fact, another name for Anand is called Priya, which is liking something, loving something. And when you love something, you feel a sense of bliss. That love and bliss are really interconnected, and one way that you can prove the existence of God by the means of Sikhi is that by the means of Sat Chit Anand, which is often termed as Asti Bhati Priya. Hana? Again, we'll stick to the same terms: existence, consciousness, bliss, Sat Chit Anand. You can prove Sat Chit Anand from any object, because in Sikhi, every single object is made up of five things. One is the name and form. One is the name and form. And there is one, and then the next aspect is Sat-Chit Anand. So Sat-Chit Anand, existence, consciousness, bliss, and name and form. You've got these five things to everything. And even in Gurbani, you find all these metaphors of Kanik Katik Jalatarang Jaisa. Alankar Milathali Hui hai. If you take all these ornaments and you melt them down to one lump of gold, it's still gold. So the name and form is changing, but the actual essence is the same. And that essence is Sada Satchidanand. That essence is Satchit Anand, is existence, consciousness, bliss. And what makes Satchidanand so interesting is that it's very practical, in the sense that you can prove Satchit Anand from any object you have. है ना? Say, for example, I'll go back to this book here. है ना? Does this book exist? Let's just be very simple. Can I see this book? Does this book exist? Yes, it does exist.
Yes.
If it exists, therefore it infers existence. There must be a thing called existence for this book to exist. Chit, consciousness. How do you prove consciousness? Is this book cognizable? Can you
Yes.
see this book? Are you
Yeah.
aware of the book? Yes, you are. So therefore, there is something called consciousness, which is allowing you to be conscious. Okay, Anand, do you like this book? Hannah, can you like this book? Do you feel a sense of bliss with this book? Obviously, when I write, look at my notes again, I do feel a sense of bliss. I do like my book. If somebody took this book and slammed it on the floor, I'd be angry. So it's likable, and that sense of being likable, it infers anand, it infers bliss, and so you can prove the Sikh idea of God as Sat-Chit-Anand, as Sat Gur Prasad from any object you want. And when it comes to again, love, it's really interesting that in certain Sikh texts, in certain Sampradaya texts, for example, Vichar Sagar, it talks about how the anand, the happiness, the bliss you feel in the world is actually a reflection, is an abhas of your own nature. है ना? So when you, for example, say for example, let's take the example of ice cream. है ना? What flavor do you like? ETH Babaji. है ना? What do you like? Get a flavor.
I'm a chocolate kind of guy, yo.
Love Baba Sindhi dasso.
Vanilla.
Vanilla.
Of
ठीक
course,
है, I like
of course, you would like vanilla.
Why? What's wrong with vanilla?
Vanilla ass banda, yo.
What's wrong?
I,
with
Hey,
I
hey,
like
hey.
mango
What
ice
does that
cream.
mean?
है ना?
I see.
Oh.
Yeah. This guy likes mango. I wonder why. Orange banda.
So what you find is that somebody likes one thing and the other person doesn't like that thing. And what Vedant, what Gurbani in some places says is that in reality, the bliss, when you eat chocolate ice cream, you feel a sense of bliss. When I eat mango ice cream, I feel a sense of bliss. When Lovepreet eats vanilla ice cream, he feels a sense of bliss. And what it's saying is that the bliss itself does not exist within the ice cream. It exists within the person which is actually tasting it or interacting with it. And where is that bliss coming from? It's coming from the desire of that object. When you desire something, and then you attain it, you feel a sense of bliss. And that is what that bliss is. And you can apply that same idea to love. Hana? Because the love and bliss are really interconnected, and in some ways you can even term them as interchangeable in one way. Hana? That you love something and that love is bringing anand. And again, we talked about the enemy whole situation. Even when you hate somebody, you're still attached to them. Hana?
Yeah.
That attachment is also, even attachment is a form of love. When
Yeah.
you love somebody and they're doing something wrong, you get angry at them because you love them. Otherwise, why would you care? So love transcends all these things, and love is really connected to anand as well. And I think it's love, it's the desire for something, because even love is a desire in one way. Love is a desire, an emotion, however you want to see. Even that desire is bringing about anand. So it's really interesting that in the Sikh path of philosophy, you can prove God from anything. You can see how it all works. With Sat-Chit-Anand. I forgot what I was going to say, man. ਤੁਸੀਂ carry on ਕਰ ਦਿਓ,
Yeah, that's the
carrying
difference.
on.
That's the difference between us and something that we have that's so powerful, that's so untapped when it comes to apologetics, right? So I know Autogen, for many viewers, I was gonna be like, what is this guy talking about? But when you think about it, I'm just gonna kind of ground what he said a little bit. And he made beautiful points and no disagreement there at all. You have, when we look at what can we prove about us that is always there, that is never changing. Existence. What exists with what is that thing that is it within all everything existence, because we wouldn't know, right, what's outside of existence, right? So existence is a fundamental reality, a fundamental ground that everything is held upon, that everything rests upon. It's that fundamental ground, that ground reality, existence. And when we define God as existence, that's our evidence right there. And then when we look at ourselves, what within us is always existing, one and the same, consciousness. Yeah, there's different. You have different states of consciousness, but what's still there? Consciousness, right? Whether you're asleep, whether you're dreaming, whether we call these the panch koshas, the five different levels, right? From uh, you know, this waking state of this annamaya kosh, this body, this physical body to this mental body, the subtle body they call it, all the way to our ignorance. What do they call it? Well, what's there? What's always there? Consciousness, right? Now that we can prove that through logic that there's something within us that's always there, that's always existing, consciousness, and then we move on into this experience of that consciousness. That consciousness is always being experienced, always being enjoyed, and that's what we call bliss, right? And that enjoyment comes through different things. um you know you have, for example, you came with the laddu. Let's look at the example of a laddu, or we talked about ice cream. Let's look at the example of ice cream. Where is the pleasure located? Is the pleasure located within the ice cream, or is it located on the tongue? Right? Where is the pleasure located? What if it's located in the ice cream? Then why is it that when we eat too much ice cream, we get tired of ice cream?
Mm-hmm.
If it's located within the tongue, on the tongue, and the taste buds, then how come we can't experience it without the ice cream? Right? So what happens is that once to reflect true nature, to reflect true reality, and because that existence, consciousness, and bliss is always there, never changing, what happens is that when we finally take our mind and it becomes still, when we experience the ice cream, then we can have a chance to experience that bliss a little bit. But that's just like a very small example of what bliss really means, and it's a long conversation. But the point is being that we find our metaphysics, we find our theology, our spirituality, our religion through the natural world. The difference that we have with other religions, especially specifically Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, is that they find their theology and the substance of their religion based on miracles, right? So you have to prove those miracles, right? So when I was debating Muslims, they asked me, they're like, okay, what if you saw Moses do a miracle? What if you saw Moses split the sea? Is your whole religion based off of just miracles? Is this to you evidence of God? For us, our evidence of God is the things around us. It's the bees, it's the flowers, it's the skies, it's the waves in the ocean. It's the consciousness that exists within us, right? It's our existence itself that gives us evidence of God. For you, your evidence of God is these miracles
and
that
and
may
that
or may
and
not
that
have
you
occurred.
could also say that reality is a miracle, right? Like
Reality is a miracle, exactly.
science is
That's what
like,
Sukhni Sahib. That's Sukhni Sahib, right? Sukhni Sahib is, with Maharaj Jeh Prasad Shati Amrit Kahe. Through the Prasad, you're experiencing all these things. Through, because of God, you're here. Why don't you remember God? Because you're here. Kisi Pankti ho. Uh, I'll pull it out, but like you have all like our we're here to see God in everything. We're here to see the reality of or Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings in everything, and that's why Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Gurbani is using the examples of the deer, the examples of
Yeah.
the waves in the ocean, the example of the bumblebee. These things are being used so that we're able to see things right in front of us. We
And
don't need to
also,
we don't need to believe. Yes,
100%.
belief comes in trust. When I we talked about this. When I have a teaching of Guru Nanak Dev Ji, that I'm like, wow, that's true. What happens is that I begin trusting Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and that's belief. And I believe Guru Nanak Dev Ji's, this path that Guru Nanak Dev Ji started is true, and throughout true, right? Because I've begun to trust it because It's shown me that it's proven, right? And that's belief. That is belief, right? But I would say that's better than this blind belief that, okay, whatever the Bible says, whatever the Quran says is true no matter what. I'm not going to even think about it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
You know, one
That's
thing. Sorry.
go ahead.
One thing that you said, which is really interesting, which I really resonate with, is the fact that, traditions like Islam, whatever, they rely on this supernatural force, Hana, for their understanding, for knowledge. But even look at, I think this is something which you look at Gurbani and you can see, Khalik, 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 Meh Khalik, Hana. The creator is within creation, creation is within the creator. And what you find is that if creation is a manifestation of God, then it must contain, then even creation itself, for example, the clay pot must also, by looking at the clay pot, you must be able to infer clay. You must be able to see the existence of a clay behind that clay pot. And one thing that you look at, just look at natural human psychology, the way we talk. Like, for example, in Punjabi, we might say, mera hirda bara udasya. Hana? That I'm really sad. My heart is really sad, Ja mera man dukhiya. My mind is really sad, Hana? And what you find is that you could ask the question, Je tera man dukhiya, te tu kaun hai? Anything which you anything which is external to you, anything which you experience, and in the sense of this is mine. If this is mine, then who are you? You can't be the same thing as what is mine. You can't be the same thing which you possess. So the whole idea is that जे तू दुखी है जे तेरा मन दुखी है ते तू कौन है तू मन तो हो नहीं सकता you can't be the mind because you're experiencing the mind है ना you're experiencing the mind being in a state of sadness and so what's behind that and going beyond and beyond going back and back and what Gurbani says is net na iti not this going back and back peeling the layers covering the true identity of yourself or the true reality behind the world. You come to that realization of the self. Even just by speaking normally, even just by, natural human psychology. Oh, I'm sad, or, oh, my leg hurts, or, my heart hurts, or whatever. The idea of it being mine, it makes you question who are you then? Hana? So, I think that the rishis, be it the Buddhists, be it Gurbani, the guru's looking at creation and he's inferring the creator there. He's seeing the underlying essence. Gurbani is so beautiful. You can go outside into a garden. Dekh fool foole, ahang tyag tyage. Hana? That look at these, flowers blossoming. When a flower, before a flower blossoms into, what it is, it's really hard, it's really tough. And as it blossoms, it loses that hardness, that toughness. So ahang tyage in the same way, renounce your ego, in the same way, renounce your pride, your idea of individuality. So Gurbani is looking at creation and it's seeing the underlying reality present and it's proving that, not only inferring, not only saying that, oh yeah, this could be the case, but it's proving it in front of you by the means of stuff like Sat-Chit-Anand.
Yeah. I just think that, like, what ends up happening is then how do the masses deal with these topics, right? These ideas, like, how do we get them? How do you distill them down, right? And I think that when you have, like, because everyone can't do metaphysics, man. Like, I hated metaphysics. It's actually one of my like least, like, I can understand it enough to, like, interface with it, but I hate it, man. It just gets too, like,
But I think this is where we kind of fail. I think that the guru didn't intend every single person to be, intellectually stimulated or to, have this idea of, going into metaphysics or what is philosophy, what is God, whatever. There's also very, there's also an idea of community there as well. There's also an idea of seva or kirtan, and that's something which the layman can do. And I think that when the Guru says "Kotana main nanak ko Narayana jehjeet," he's not just saying that for the public of his time. He's also saying that for people of all times. है ना? Kotana main nanak ko, amongst millions, there's scarcely somebody who's actually reflecting, who's actually remembering, who's actually contemplating upon this stuff. And the Guru isn't trying to take every single person and take every single person and
make the
make them think in a
monolith, right?
certain.
Like making the whole pantha monolith of like everyone has to have this exact same identity, and
No, exactly. I
that
think if
no
sorry,
no no no
I
you
think
go.
if the aspect of kirtan makes you like connect with the Guru, connect with philosophy, connect with Sikhi or whatever, that's amazing. If you like seva, again, Satguru ki seva gakhari, है ना? Gurbani talks of the fruits of seva. If it's about gyan, Gurbani talks of the fruits of gyan. Gurbani talks of the Brahm Gyani, the knower of Brahm. If it's about kirtan, Gurbani says that Kal Yuga Meh Kirtan Pradhana, in Kali Yuga, in the age of Kali, Kirtan is the greatest, singing the praises of God, sitting down, getting together. Or if it's about Nam Japana, then Gurbani devotes so much to Nam. And so I think Gurbani is catering to different types of people. Whereas when you read stuff like, the Quran, I tried reading the Quran once, Hana. And what you find is it's just a teaching to society, to a community. It's not personal. When you read Gurbani, the Guru is saying like, Kaho Nanak Paj Haramana, or different philosophies, it's much more like, obviously in Christianity you can find these elements as well, where it's much more, towards a certain tribe, towards a certain group of people. But what Gurbani is doing is Gurbani isn't even going towards, it isn't even having a dialogue with a certain community of people or a group of people, nor is it even talking to the body. It's talking to the mind. Kaho nanak paj haramana, hana. It's always bringing the mind again and again. And when the
Man
gurus,
मेरेया तू सदा रहो नाले ए मन ए मेरे मन ए मेरे मन, like that's all
man
Gurbani is
ko jo
saying.
swaroop hai.
Yeah,
Again,
it's
the
always
man,
referring to the mind.
dono,
Oh my mind, always, bro.
You
It's
oh
super
my
Gyanis
mind.
can quote so much Barney. The only man line I can think of is Manjeet Jagjit, because all the basic bitches on Instagram have that in their bios, and I've seen it enough. But no,
that's prachar too. That's
on
prachar too.
your point, right? Is like I think of how many families have desi bande or whatever that are like. They'll put TV on of Barney just like in the background because they believe like this is what they need to do, not because they love doing this truly. If they really like, what they would really love to do is like have kabaddi on, or have the news on. Like that's something they really love, right? Listening to podcasts, or like brown parents version of podcasts, which is like whatever, like Joginder Basi, listening to Maskeen and stuff, right? And I think that there's like a ritualistic element that has come into it. But like, I remember when I used to burn, I used to like listen to Sade or listen to music, and I would just be like, yo, thank you for letting me exist. Like, God, like, you're the best, because like I got to experience this music. I got to feel this. Like, fuck, man, this is awesome. But some people make Sikhi into a very like formulaic thing, right? And I want to get your guys' take on this, which is like, I understand the idea of Nithanim being like everyday spiritual discipline. It's deepening your wisdom. It's also I call it like God maxing, where you're basically trying to like have your brain always be thinking about God to the point that it's in your dreams, it's in altered states of consciousness, etc., etc. But when I believe that when somebody who doesn't do Nithanim on the regular, but when they do it, it's like just such pure love, like it's coming from a place of just like I need to do this so badly, that is a much pure expression of love than somebody who's like, I need to just have Barney on, or I need to do Nithanim on, not because I'm in love with it, but because this is what I'm supposed to do. It's part of my identity, not part of what makes me tick and what makes me love.
Yeah. You have two types of taram. You have sadharan taram and asadharan taram. Two types. So one type of taram is that which allows you to look into things philosophically, allows you to like see the reality behind things, see that we're all one, right? Then you have a type of religion that's meant to create those boundaries, right? Because if you don't create those boundaries, so yeah, we have an all-encompassing philosophy. We have, we see everything as one, and we see, there's no Hindu and there's no Muslim, and it's all just subjectivities, and people made up all these things throughout history. Yes, we see those things, but we're also humans, and we're also part of those same histories. We also need, you know, an identity. We need to create an identity that makes us different, we have our own rituals, we have our own food, we have our own clothes. The reason why we need to create these things is because we would have been lost. We would have faded into history. We would have faded into history as
Nobody.
just any other, group of people. So, that deeper stuff is like that garden, and I use this example a lot. That deeper stuff is like that garden that you have. You're growing flowers, you're growing whatever you want to grow, whether it's fruits and apple trees or pears or grapes or flowers, whatever you're growing something beautiful within that garden. And that's that philosophical bhakti side of Sikhi, right? You have that. But then what about the fence? If you don't put up a fence, you're gonna have parasites, not parasites, what is it? Pests. Yeah, you're gonna have pests that are gonna come in. You're gonna have rabbits and skunks and raccoons that come in and eat your fruits, right? Eat
Mm-hmm.
your eat all your hard work, right? So without that fence that we've created by having these rituals, yes, they're rituals,
Mm-hmm.
but by creating these rituals, what we've done is we've created um, a book, like a fence to protect that garden. Let's another example is a book. You have a book. You have a book cover. All these things are book covers. Someone keeps that book. They keep that book in their house. Someone's gonna come and read it, right? Someone's gonna come and read it for what's really in there. So we have this shell of identity that we've created using ritual, using uh, traditions, and using the way we look and things like that. But someone's gonna come along who's gonna see, not look at the shell anymore, but see like the actual meat inside it. They're gonna actually read that book. They're gonna actually walk into that garden, and they're gonna
But
see those flowers, right? Go
if
on.
you don't mind, if I add just a little bit of my 2 cents, I think that's one idea which I really resonate with, about kind of creating this fence of protecting like the teaching itself, Hana, because if you just have a Guru Granth Sahib and there's nothing that you actually do, which is practical, which is making you go back to the Guru Granth Sahib, which is making you going back to Gurbani, then it's people really forget about it. But one more thing which I really find on a spiritual level, because that's something which you could say on a collective level, Hana, on a individual level or a spiritual level, I see that when you make a habit of something, Hana, say for example, you say at this, I'm going to wake up at this time, and I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to do this at this time for this long. Yeah. As you keep on doing it and doing it, it becomes effortless. It becomes sahaj. It becomes effortless. It becomes swabhavik. And so I think coming from a spiritual kind of
That
or
that's that that
individual.
that's the biohacking part that I speak about, where
Yeah, yeah,
20
the
20
biohacking
21 days something becomes habit, right? You go through
habit.
whatever,
Yeah.
and then but continue.
Yeah,
And
you're
what it
taking.
really does is that I think at a certain point where, say for example, you're doing this at this point, it becomes natural. You start to naturally wake up at that point of time. You start to naturally have this desire to sit down and do this. Otherwise, it feels like you're incomplete. So that's one aspect, and then also the other aspect is that once it becomes a habit, once it becomes a discipline, slowly, slowly, it consumes your life. Slowly, slowly, you come and you sit, you do a nitnem, and then you sit down to do some dhyan, you sit down to do some, meditation. And when you do that, at a certain point, doing it again and again and again, as it becomes effortless, you come to a state of what Gurbani says, sahaj samadhi, Hana? Which is sahaj doesn't mean slowly, slowly. Sahaj means naturally. You naturally come to a state of samadhi. Sahaj samadhi. Sahaj means effortless. You effortlessly can come to a state of samadhi, samadhi. Dhi means your mind, where your mind is at equilibrium. You come to that state. And so I think that's something which really plays a
and
big
and
role
and
on
and
an
and,
individual level.
and like, listen, I'm older than you guys, and I've had crazy experiences, and I want to give you an experience that reflects on what Arjun Singh just said, right? if you guys have been in the Discord, you've heard this story. Maybe you guys haven't, but I did. The shrooms trip I did, right? When my brain was fucking like completely like, what the fuck is going on? It defaulted to God. Like it just went like, yo, I love God, God, God. Like it was like obsessively thinking about that, right? And there's a line in Guru Granth Sahib that's something like, those who have love of duality are like, they'll never be free. Because if you get into a state like that, right? Let's hypothetically, no one knows what happens in death like fully, right? Because there's no proof. But let's hypothetically say that you still have like a trace of your consciousness left. Somebody who's been so attuned to reality would be like, where's my body? Right? It causes confusion, it causes flustering. But if you can come into such a form where your mind is just like, it doesn't matter. As long as I can think of God, I'm good. As long as I can still feel that love, as long as I can still immerse myself in this, even in altered state of consciousness, thinking about God, like I'm good. Like how many people, first off, how many people dream anymore? Like people don't even remember their dreams at this point anymore. Like I don't know what that has to say about society, but how many people in their dreams think like, I didn't do my Nithin today, or like I didn't remember God, or like I need to chase after God. There's a story where Ram Das, the fucking Gora who went all hippie and tried to become Hindu, he had a Baba or a guru in India called Neem Crowley Baba basically. And they went and took acid for him. They took a bunch of acid. They gave it to him. He takes the acid. He doesn't trip out. He's like, whatever, that was nothing. And then Ramdas comes back and he tells his buddy, and his buddy's like, this guy just duped you, right? These guys, you got scammed by an Indian. And he goes, okay, this time I'm going to take way more. And Ramdas goes with a bunch of acid this time, gives it to Neem Crowley. Neem Crowley takes it, and he just starts to like convulse. And he's like doing all this stuff. He's like freaking out and stuff. And Ramdas is like, holy shit, I just cooked this guy's brain with like all this acid. And then when Ramdas is like all like worried, like Neem Crowley just perfectly fine. And he starts laughing. He's like, this thing does nothing when you're already always connected. And I always took that story as like, this dude was like, his consciousness was above like the body. And so even though the acid was like, you know, it's supposed to affect your body, which affects your mind, he's already on a plane of existence that he is feeling at one. He's feeling oneness, that this acid that is supposed to chemically change you and put you on a trip, it's not going to do that, because the consciousness is truly in that state of always remembering. That even either when you're like in an unconscious state, God, you remember God. When you're in a conscious state, you remember God. And I think that's what the biohacking mechanism of Barney is supposed to be. Of when you remember God constantly, right? You know, there's that one story where a guy names his kid Narayan, I believe is the name. You guys could tell me if I'm wrong, right? And then he's dying, or the Jamdoots come to get him, and he yells out the kid's name, and then the Jamdoots go like they fuck off because he says God's name, right? Now, he doesn't remember God Uddai, but because the kid's name was Narayan, he remembers the God in that moment, right? And this is the minutia, the logistics of like the reason to do Barney, the reason to constantly remember God, the reason to constantly think about these things is when they become so ingrained with who you are and your personality and your consciousness, and they're stamped, that everything you do, you remember God. Most people only remember God when shit goes wrong. Oh, I have cancer. Oh, I hurt myself. Or this, blah, blah, blah. Then a few people remember God when things are going great. But a few people truly remember God when there's nothing happening, good or bad. Just the mundaneness of life. That God can sustain them, and God, the idea of Akal Purkh, the idea of consciousness and love and all these things, they are creating like a layer on the soul that's really like giving it like a residue that's like stuck with you.
Yeah, it's like a basketball player, right? Can't shoot free throws, you know, in tough moments. So, you know, when the game's on the line, so he's practicing free throws 24/7, right? So he's doing the practice work, and us doing these rituals, these you know, waking up at Amrta, and you know, meditating and doing japa and doing our nitnem, and you know, that's us putting in the work. That's us putting in the work
I
so
do
that we
want
can get on the court.
I
right?
do want to say though that like it's not a ritual. I think a ritual is when you do something brainlessly.
A ritual is anything. When I use the term ritual, I just mean anything that
No,
you
no,
do
I know, but
routinely.
like you know how
Yeah.
like certain words have become buzzwords in
They
Panthic
become
discourse,
bad,
right?
yeah. But a
Right?
ritual is essentially like like its actual definition is anything that you do routinely.
Yeah.
And we do Nitram routinely. It's a routine. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that we do every day. We do Amrit Vela, we do Sangrand. Sangrand is a monthly ritual, right?
Yeah.
We every month we go and celebrate the changing of the months, and then we read Bara Maha, right? So it's all these things. Gurpurab, those are yearly rituals, but these are things that keep us connected and keep us grounded, right? You stop doing Nitnem, you have those monthly Sangrans. You stop doing Sangrand, you have those yearly Gurpurabs, right? So everything is trying to keep us on this path, no matter what. It's trying to keep us in the court, right? You think of it from like a basketball perspective. These things are keeping us grinding in the court, practicing, so that when time comes to actually play the game, we play the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a player who's not practicing, look at Kobe. He was in the court practicing at like 3 a.m.,
Stop
4
saying
a.m.,
in the
right?
court, man. On the court, bro.
On the
God
court.
damn, you play basketball, bro. That was bugging me, and you did
No,
it like
no,
six
no,
times.
no. Yeah, I know. Whatever. But like when you're playing, like you need that practice that you've done, you know, those before us, right? So that's creating, that's us working and creating that mentality, that perspective. Even us studying philosophy is us doing that. Where we're creating this perspective that we can use every single day and every single moment to see God within everything and in every single
I
moment.
I have an interesting question, and I wonder what you guys think. Do you think one of the things that Sikhi kind of, and I'm not saying it's the fault of the gurus or anything, I'm saying it's more of the fault of the people, is that Sikhi requires so much more nuance than mankind can afford it?
Yeah, pretty much.
You
Pretty
know?
much. When it comes to the philosophical side, you need to understand like for Westerners, like to put it into perspective, it's like very Nietzsche level understandings. You need to understand subjectivity and objectivity and things like that and
Like
levels of reality, and
even
it's
the
very nuanced.
even the
Yeah.
ritual, like this thing, there's a nuance to it, because
Yeah.
there's one level where if you just do it so blindly, it's a nothing burger. It doesn't matter
It's
how
yeah.
many, if you have a
Mm.
tally of all the times you did Nithanim on the wall and you did all these things, it means nothing. You tear it all up, it did nothing. You had,
It did
but
nothing.
then
Yeah.
there's another side where you're just like esoterically being like, I just love without any real practice that's actually substantiating this idea you have of love,
Yeah.
right? And so the nuance is like, where is that balance, right? What is that push
We're
and
the-
pull?
we're- We are the true middle path. We are the true middle path. We never go to extremes. We find the middle path within everything. Between Gyan Jog and Bhakti Jog, we find the middle path. Between uh, free will and no free will, we find the middle path. Between existence and non-existence, we find the middle path. We are the middle path. Between Sunya and Parpurta, we find the middle path. We were talking about it, Arjun Singh, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Susham te
You know,
susham, but briddan te briddan, right? Like it's
yeah.
it's 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 the fullest of the fullest, but it's also the empty, like the smallest of the smallest. We find the middle path. You need this nuance you need to be able to understand these nuances to understand what Sikh is actually trying to say. Because no matter how much jap up you do, you come out of the jap up, you're gonna be like, no one does as much jap up as me. I'm this religious dude. That ego is always gonna be there. We're here to destroy the ego. To destroy the ego, you need the middle path, right? The middle path, for those that don't know, it's a very Buddhist term.
Yeah,
Um,
Madhyamika. Yeah.
yeah,
they just
Yeah, exactly.
they just messed up on the middle path because they didn't have the Karagataram, right? And that
But you
kind
know,
of fucked their shit up, in my opinion.
one
yeah,
more thing I think which is really interesting is like, when it comes to like, I think Atheist, put this really good point about like a person in cancer, Rab Devare, Rabanu Yad Karna, whatever. One thing which, because I'll be honest, I do spend some time reading the Gita. Krishna says, Ananya Cheta Satatam, Yomam Sumarati Nityashah, Tasyaham Sulabha Partha, Nitya Yuktasya Yogina. That, essentially, O Parth, O Arjun, that, a person who is Ananya, other than me, thinks about nobody else. Ananya, kalla mere bare sochda hai. Wah, wah. only thinks about me. Chetaha satatam. Yomam smarati nityashah. Every single second. And a very great, Shankara, a very, very great philosopher. He comments on the Gita, and he, puts a question: how long is Krishna saying? How long should you be thinking about God? How long should you be, thinking of me? And he says that is it 6 months? Is it 1 month? How long is it? Nitya yuktasya. Every single second, constantly. And I think death is something which really does lead you to a place where you start to question reality. You start to you know you start to take more interest into these matters, one story you find is that of Raja Parikshit, and his tale comes in the Bhagavad Puran. And in the Bhagavad Puran it goes that he's cursed that he will die in 7 days. And then what does he do? He goes to the sadhus and he sits there and he listens to all these stories and meditative practices of Krishna, of God, and by doing so, he attains liberation. And there's even one other story where this person is said that you will die in 7 days. A sadhu goes to a king, and he says, "You will die in 7 days." कि सत्ता देना दे विच तेरी मौत होगी. Obviously, if you want to understand the story, you have to switch a little bit into Punjabi that you will die within 7 days. And when
Mm-hmm.
he listens to that, the king starts going crazy, Hannah. He's like, oh my God, I will die in 7 days. I want to get liberation. I want to be liberated before I die, Otherwise, I will keep on returning into this, place of suffering. And what does he do for the next 7 days? Forgetting about, he forgets about eating food. He forgets about his hunger, his pyas, his thirst, or whatever. He just sits down and he engages in contemplation, in meditation, in simran. And what happens is that by the end of the 7 days, he's already liberated. He's become so God conscious that he can only think of God. And when the sadhu comes again after the 7 days, it's the eighth day now. The king asked the sadhu that you said that I will die within 7 days, Hana? कि 7 दिना दे विच तेरी मौत होगी, Hana? But I haven't died. And he said that everybody dies in 7 days. A week is made up of 7 days. Everybody's living in a week. Today's Saturday. Today's Saturday. Everybody's living in those 7 days. He said, you will die within 7 days. कि तू 7 दिना दे विच मरूंगा. You will die in a week's time. Everybody is living in a week. Everybody is living in a certain day.
Like a version of themselves dies. It's kind of like that. You never step into the same river twice. Something
And
along
it's
the
also
lines of
that
that.
everybody will die within the 365 days of a year.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody will die in the 7 days of a week. So essentially, that illusion that he will die led him to going beyond illusion, going to this liberation, going towards this, realization of reality of non-duality of God. So that illusion took him somewhere, and that's why I think in Gurbani you also find all these different pointers again taking you back to the concept of death. Or you will die one day, you will die one day, है ना? कि जो उपजो सो बिन से है परो आज के काल नानक हर गुण गाए ले छाड़ सगल जंजाल. That that anything which is being born will one day die, है ना? जो उपजो सो बिन से है, be it
What if
today, be
what
it tomorrow.
if what if nothing? Kahe na upji jana pava
But
pava
that's the
hona.
thing, though. That's the thing. That's the realization. It's this illusion which leads you there. And once I asked my ustad, I asked my teacher, I said to them, look, you talk about non-duality, but when I read Gurbani, I even find verses of Kabir, Kaho Kabir Hiram ki ansh. You are just a part of God, but you're saying that the part isn't different from God. You're saying that there is no part. God can't be split into parts. Gurbani is the Guru, the Akal Purakh is akhand. He cannot be separated into khandas, into different parts. And I said, how is it in one place Gurbani is saying Atam Ram Ram hai Atam. The Atma is Ram. And the Ram is the Atma. O Sagar mein hai boond boond mein hai Sagar. Within the ocean is the droplet. In the droplet exists the entire ocean. And they said to me, look, in reality, duality is cutting duality, Ignorance is cutting ignorance. He said, for example, you get a thorn stuck in your foot. Again, back to the garden example. You're in a garden full of roses and a thorn stabs your foot. You get pricked by a thorn. And how do you remove that thorn? You can remove that thorn using another thorn. Pick another stone
That's
off.
Chillin's favorite example to use. I've
I got
heard
it.
this.
I got it from Arjun. I got it from Arjun. That's why.
I've
I'm
heard
not
it.
gonna
You
lie.
know,
Okay.
Yeah,
and actually, it
I
comes
got it
in
from this dude.
Shankaracharya's works as well. This example, and what you find is that your duality is kind of duality. The ignorance of being separate from God is leading you to this desire of becoming one with God. You know, because now you feel kaho kabir ho Ram ki ansh, or bahut janam bichhode the madho. From so many lives, we've been separated, we've been disconnected, and that, even though that itself is in ignorance, that is something which is not necessarily true per se, from the supreme reality. But that is leading you towards non duality. That is, when you understand, oh my God, I've been separated from my beloved from so many lifetimes. Now, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? My purpose is to become one with my beloved. And so, again, that's ignorance.
Yeah.
But that desire born from ignorance is leading you to knowledge, is leading you to knowing reality. So ignorance is cutting ignorance, Hana. It's like venom produces anti-venom,
You know,
So
I feel like such a good example to explain why non-dualism is such a paradoxically mindfuck is if you frame it as the paradox story of the ship of Theseus. Chillin, do you know about this? Okay, the ship of Theseus is a philosophical paradox where Theseus has a ship, right? And over the years, every single piece starts to slowly get replaced. The boards, the mast, the strings, the planks, the nails, every single one is slowly being replaced, right? Because they're repairing the ship. And after a certain amount of years, every single piece has been replaced. Is it still the ship of Theseus? That's A. And then B is all those pieces that were taken were used to make another ship. Is that ship the ship of Theseus?
I see. So the
Yeah,
Buddhists have something very similar, the chariot. What is a chariot? Is a chariot the parts? Is a chariot, right? That's why we come with Namrup. Arjun mentioned it like a little bit before, that the world is made up of five things: existence, consciousness, experience or bliss, and then also Namrup, name and form.
and
So
I think, but with this paradox, the thing is like
yeah,
there is no real answer there. You can
there is no real answer.
you
Yeah,
can could
because
but then that's the thing with non-dualistic thinking.
that's
Why some people
yeah.
can't get it is because it's a paradox, right? Yart was in the chat last night being like, Chillin breaks my brain regularly. Like, I can't understand this shit. Like, I just can't, like, he can't interface with the metaphysics of it because, like, when you haven't lived such a paradox at such a high level, right? It's just so hard to fucking understand.
Yeah.
Like, I always ask people this funny joke. I'm like, what's your favorite shape? Right?
Mm.
And everyone goes, whatever, rectangle, whatever. And I go, a circle is the best shape. And the circle is also the most paradoxical shape because it has no beginning, it has no end, right? Where does it start? Where it has no vortices, it has none of that stuff, right? And I think Sikhi is a circle in that way. And then cyclicalness, like, this is also my my attack on Abrahamic thought is that they're linear, so they're like a line, whereas we're a circle, right? We believe in cyclical thinking. I think reality shows us it's all cyclical, right? So it's all cycles, systems, whatever. But the thing is Sikhi, when we're talking about nuance, it gets to this level of understanding paradox, which I don't think has ever been truly like explained to people with like, even English Katha or whatever, that like Sikhi is Sikhi is such a paradox, and just to connect it at the beginning, that Guru Granth Sahib starts with a number followed by a symbol. They're paradoxical together because the number on its own, ik by its own, would just tell you one, and it's a numerical value, and you would use it for numerical numerical shit. Then the symbol on its own, it has so much depth to it, right? But now when you put them together, it is a paradox that no one I feel like is fully grasping that part, right? Which is why when you get higher the ladder of the metaphysics and the paradoxical nature of reality, people are just like, I can't, like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. That's why.
But just to understand your point, would it be like, so are you saying that, like, when you say one is very definitive, Hana? and a symbol is very open to interpretation. Is that what you're trying to like put out?
Well,
I know.
it's multiple things, right? Like a number can just also be like, who gives a fuck? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Who cares? It's just a number, right?
Hanji.
One in itself is just a numerical value that just like, oh, here's one pen, right? It doesn't mean much. But now that one being beside a symbol, they're both it's a circle, right? They're both interfacing with each other. The symbol is giving a different value to a numerical value of 1, and the number is giving a value that's hinged to a numerical value to the symbol. It's trippy both ways, which is what makes it a paradox, right? Because the question would be this: what's more important in Ek Oankar, the number or the symbol? You know what I'm saying? If you take
Can't
one,
give an answer.
exactly,
Can't give
it's
an
a
answer.
paradox, right?
If you think, the thing is, if you think that you can give an answer, like I'm for it that we can argue our experience of existence. We can deduce, we can logically find evidence of God. We can most of our arguments, 99% of like texts of Sampradaya and Vedant, they're all focused on Maya. They're all focused on like creation and how did this come, and etc etc. Our experience of it. Who are we? But then they all agree on what God is. And what they say is that we cannot find what God is. We cannot come to an answer, a conclusive answer that this is God, because God is always going to be a gum, incomprehensible. It's that incomprehensible reality. However, all reality is pointing towards that incomprehensible thing, right? Andhyare deepak chahiye, ek bast agochar lahiya, right? So like that gyan, that guru is the light within the darkness. But Bhakta Kabirji is writing like, to find that incomprehensible thing, I need light. I need, and that's the guru. That gyan anjan gurdiya, right? Gyan anjan gurdiya, right? And then the gyan comes from the guru, right? The knowledge to find that incomprehensibility is from the guru, right? So, but when coming into terms with Western philosophy, there, Nietzsche put it so well for me at least, right, on his views on perspectivism, that we as humans, because of our human brain, because of our personal experiences, we can never come to an understanding of objective reality, never. To find objective reality, the human mind must be made inoperative, right? That's what he writes. That, you and I are going to see the same tree, or you and I are going to see the same cause and effects, happening, but we're going to have different interpretations of it. And you know, someone once said to me that, you know, that is Maya. When we disagree on something, on interpretation, that is what Maya is. Maya is, when you see this rope, someone sees a snake, someone sees a crack in the ground. It's all perspective. Or the elephant. Five blind men go to the elephant. They see so many different things. One is touching the tail, one is touching the trunk, one is touching the leg, one is saying, "Oh, this is a tree trunk. No, this is a broom. No, this is a pipe." Right? So we're all seeing reality from our small little subjective perspectives, but reality, objective reality at least, is impossible to get at. And
But again,
you must go beyond the human mind, and that's what Sikhi is doing, going beyond the human mind.
but again, the example of even like the elephant, you can't say that person is wrong either. I know.
They're not wrong. To
For
them,
example, like
yeah.
I'll give you an example, and this example applies to this idea of reality. Of being, the idea of subjectivity, objectivity, but it also applies to the idea that Gurbani caters to many people, and that is that for example, the ocean, the wave, and water. I know. There's three people. There's three people. There's three people in this call, and let's say for the example, there are three people. I know. You've got atheist here who goes, say for example, we all go together, we sit in a car. Obviously, I'm in the
We need
UK.
to get better with names,
Lovely.
bro.
Just
We
say
suck at
E.
names here.
Just say E, bro.
Yeah.
You can just say E.
No, but atheist.
I think you have so
Yeah,
no.
atheist.
No, you don't need to say the theist part. Just say E.
Okay, E, Hana.
Yeah.
Oh, Hana. So essentially,
Or
so
if you want to say my real name is Ek Oankar, bro.
Oankar, wow. So you've got, 3 people here, Hana. We've got
Eat
E,
the
we've got
first. That's why
we've
he did
got
E the first, because he's taking the ik Oankar, like the ik, and like putting it
Wah,
at the back. E the first.
Wah.
Exactly.
So Baba say there's 10 bande, we go to the beach, Hana. Baba E says, actually, I say, Arjun Singh says, look, you